Hello there, my name is Daniel Zimmer. I'm one of the writing tutors at the Cincinnati State Writing Center. This is a video workshop entitled Improving Sentence Structure, Understanding Fragments and Run-Ons. Let's go. First, a question for you. Why are you here? If you're watching this because you are, for example, in an English composition class, you probably have to be here. Most students are here because they have to be here. Let's be honest. And we know that writing can be difficult. As a tutor myself, I have heard this from many students who have great ideas, but can find the process of writing them down a bit frustrating. But it's a skill that can help you not just with your English composition classes, but with your skills in general as a person who can read and write in the world. You might use it in other classes. You might use writing for self-expression, and in general, I think to be able to participate well in the society, to be able to express your ideas and articulate your thoughts, having good writing skills is pretty helpful. Writing can be hard, but you can learn. Today, I'm going to show you some quick fixes to make writing a little bit easier for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about grammar. I know some people love grammar. You might not be one of those people, but I'm going to do my best to make some ideas from grammar clear, and hopefully that will help you become a better writer and maybe even enjoy writing. Today we're going to focus on sentence structure. A quick note for you, about sentence structure, some thoughts about it. It's important to remember that we don't write the way that we speak, the way we have conversations, the way that we hear the language. If you are a hearing person, you have a auditory and oral sense of the language through your ear. So certain things sound right and sound okay when we're talking that don't really work well in writing. Talking is totally different. We interrupt ourselves. We use filler words like and like and right and and all those kinds of things. We also interrupt ourselves a lot. It's normal for somebody to start talking about one thing and then go, oh yeah, and that reminds me. Or start talking about one topic, change topics, go back to the first topic. So the idea of a sentence is kind of a strange notion until you try to make rules about how we write language down. Since I'm recording this at a time when most of us are having to isolate at home because of the coronavirus pandemic, if somebody in the future is watching this and things are better, good. But right now, a lot of people are stuck at home, and if you are stuck at home, one thing you could try to pass some time might be to record a conversation you're having with somebody else. Just talk about anything, and then listen back to the recording and try to write down what you hear, and see how difficult it can be to decide, how do you punctuate this? How many words did I actually say that were clear, non-repetitive words that contributed to the conversation, and how much of it was going, yeah, like, awesome, and like repeating a lot of the same words. You're going to find that what sounds fine in a conversation looks quite different on the page. When we have rules about writing, it's important to understand, in my opinion, that we have these rules in part to make the writing clearer, to make it easier for people to understand what you mean. And if you're looking at using writing as a tool of self-expression, you can learn these rules so that you can play with them later. In your English composition classes, the rules of writing and grammar are used in a very specific way. And there are certain cases where certain types of writing call for an attention to that kind of detail. But a teacher I once had often said, there are not rules, there are only tools. So I'm going to show you some rules, but remember, in the end, they are tools to help you be a better writer. All right, blah, blah, blah. So let's get on to the first thing here. What is a sentence? This is a question that I suspect many students I have worked with have not known the answer to, and that's okay, because the sentence is, well, it's an interesting idea. You need three key ingredients to make a sentence a written sentence. One thing you need is a subject. The other thing you need is a verb. I'll explain more of what those things mean, but the general idea here is that you need these two things, and then there are a lot of other ingredients in a sentence, but many times we can think of them as what we've called here the completer. That is like the chunk of the sentence that finishes things off. So let's dig into this a little bit. What's a subject? What's a verb? A subject is someone or something. A verb is what they are doing. So it's not just any action. It is clearly connected to a subject that is doing it. If we just have a verb floating in space with no connection to a subject, it becomes hard to understand what's going on. Remember that verbs can be actions like eat or sleep or write, whatever. But it's also important to remember that to be is a verb, and that's the word be. It becomes am, are, is, was, were, will be. All of those words that refer to states of being, they come from be, and it's important to remember that all of those forms are verbs. I want to know how many times now I've said it's important to remember. See, if I was writing this down, if I was reading from a script, I would probably not say that so many times. But we all have phrases that we like to reuse that make it easy to communicate. All right, verbs can also show possibility. So are words like should, could, must, may, might, can, will. Those kinds of words are verbs too. They're describing whether something can happen or should happen or must happen, whether you must do something or can do something. Those are verbs too. They can connect to subjects. In grammar speak, we call them modal verbs. We're not super concerned about that today. Just understand they're verbs. More about subjects and verbs, okay? A subject without a verb is just a person or a thing, just kind of floating there. And you can't have a sentence without a subject-verb connection. You could have a subject like car, and you could have a verb like eat. Okay, well, if I say car eat, that's not a sentence. What's the car do? Is somebody eating the car? Is somebody eating in the car? What's going on? We need more information than that. So the idea there is that there needs to be a relationship between the subject and the verb. Finally, after the subject and the verb, you have the completer, which I have decided to call the terminator for this presentation. You will usually have other words that complete the idea in a sentence. In other words, they terminate the sentence. Let's look at some examples. Here's a subject, John. John's a person. John studies every night. Subject, John. Verb, studies every night. Keep in mind, this would follow the same structure if I said John will study every night. John was studying every night. John wants to study every night. Those all follow the same structure. Subject, verb, and you can think of terminator, right? The word terminator, like I've said, it encompasses a lot of grammatical ideas that I'm not getting into detail about right now. The important thing for you to understand, there I go again, the important thing. The important thing to remember here is that there's a sense of completeness about the sentence. It's a complete idea, it's finished. All right, next. This presentation, there's a subject because a presentation is a thing. Our verb is the coolest thing you've seen all day. I know it is. I know it is. All right, working from home. Subject. So working from home, that's an idea. An idea is a thing. A thing is a noun. And then nouns can be subjects. Can is our verb there, showing possibility, right? And be really challenging sometimes. That's true. Working from home can be very challenging. This presentation Was, here's another be verb, prepared by expert teachers. It's true. Okay, let's move on to some common issues that we see in writing. When you write, you want to try to perfect what you've already written. It's called revision and editing. When you go back to edit something, or if you need to fix something, there's certain kinds of issues that you can identify that make it easy to fix your paper. And one of those issues is choppy sentences. Short sentences are very easy, but they get boring. Here's an example. John is serious. John is a student. He studies every night. That's very monotonous, very repetitive. And keep in mind, that's not really a rule. There's no rule against writing short sentences. The writer Ernest Hemingway was known for his short, blunt sentences, and he became very famous writing that way. So creatively speaking, there are a lot of uses for that. But in general, reading short, choppy sentences that are just like subject, verb, subject, like that. John is serious. John is a student. He studies every night. Boom, boom, boom. We can combine those ideas. That's one way to fix this problem. John is a serious student who studies every night. All the same ideas are there, but they're bundled into one sentence. John, a serious student, studies every night. I can, think of what's between these commas. I'll write on the screen here. Oh, wait, it's not going to let me write. Okay, I'll highlight it. No, go back. Technology's not on my side today. Anyway, John, a serious student right here. I'm trying to circle it because I want you to see that you could think of this statement right here as being kind of like in parentheses. It's like in a box that's been put in there. I could take it out and the sentence could just say John studies every night. But I can also interrupt the space between a subject and verb. I can use a comma here, add an additional note, and then do another comma. And those commas are kind of working together to say, hold up, we have an interruption here. We have some extra information. Here's the extra information. The other comma is saying, okay, extra information complete, moving along. So it's a structural idea. Okay. Another big issue that we see where there's room for improvement in writing is the matter of weak verb choices. A good verb can punch up your sentence. Let's examine this one. Mary ran across the street. All right, we know she ran across the street. She had some urgency in crossing the street. Right? She wasn't just walking, sauntering along, right? She ran. Mary quickly ran across the street. Well, now we know we added a word to show Mary was in a hurry. How did she run? She ran quickly. Was there any other way to run? Can you run slowly? It's a little bit weak here. It's also weak because generally sentences feel a little bit punchier when the action happens first. So when we say Mary quickly, it's like, Mary quickly what? What did she do? She did something quickly. She ran, right? It's an extra microsecond of thought in your brain, but it takes just that much longer to think about what the action is. So this isn't a bad sentence. It's just not a super effective sentence. It doesn't do a great job communicating. Mary dashed across the street, right? That's a little bit punchier. Punch it up, right? Mary dashed across the street. That's more than ran. It's a kind of running. She dashed. Think about how many ways there are to run. You can dash, you can sprint, you can bolt. They all kind of sound a little bit different if you're paying attention to the sound of words. So this is not so much a grammar issue as a style issue. A sentence, and that's something to understand about grammar, I think. You can write with perfectly good grammar and still be not that great of a writer. Your writing might not be that interesting to read. Having correct grammar does not make for, like, it's not the only necessity for writing well. You have to find ways to play with the language to make it interesting to read. A lot of you watching that maybe are just concerned about how do I use this information to pass my English comp class? Well, everything I've shown you so far can be put to that use. But I like to think about the broader implications of the ways we write, what we can do with that information. So I hope you find that interesting. Yeah, Mary dashed across the street is a much more descriptive choice. All right, here's a word of caution. Warning, my friends, watch out for thesaurus overuse. Not all of the words you find will be identical in meaning. Remember context, right? The thesaurus, it's a fun word, it's fun to say. The thesaurus is a book of words that mean the same thing as whatever word you're looking up. Many of us today use the internet or computers or smartphones to find this kind of information, but there is a thesaurus.com. In case you're wondering, there are many thesauruses or thesauri, I don't know. There are a lot of them, and students like to use them to try to find other ways to say things. The problem is that the words that you find are they're not identical. They don't all mean the same thing. They don't all have the same tone. Let's think about an example here. Let's say I look up something like, I don't know, a simple word like eat. Maybe I'm writing a story about somebody eating, and I think, oh, I'm using the word eating too much. I want to find a different word from eating. So I flip to my handy thesaurus. I find, in whatever order, these would be in alphabetical order, but I'd find, devour. I'd find nibble. I'd find peck at, maybe, pecking at your food. I'd find chow down. I'd find, what are other ways to say eat? I might find enjoy, right? That's interesting. The word enjoy can mean to eat. I enjoyed a nice steak the other night, right? But not all of those words are interchangeable in the right time. Did he nibble at his popcorn, or did he inhale it at the movie theater? Whatever person. So just remember, like, words can mean the same thing, but they can have a different tone, a different feeling. We call that connotation. Connotation is when words have different feelings, different tones. Anyway, moving on. Another issue in writing is how we connect ideas and combine sentences. Here are two sentences that are separate from each other. Some students have busy schedules, period. They still find time to study. Look, I can combine them very nicely here. Some students have busy schedules, but they still find time to study. That comma in the middle after the word schedules is linking those sentences together. Here's another example. Although some students have busy schedules, they still find time to study. That although is setting me up for a clause after the comma. I haven't gotten into clauses in this video, but a clause, very simply, is a group of words that has a subject and verb relationship in it. So some sentences are clauses, but sometimes you can have a chunk of a sentence that is a clause, and that can't stand on its own. In this case, although some students have busy schedules, is a chunk of words that cannot stand on its own. What if I just stop there? Although some students have busy schedules, you're like, what? They still find time to enjoy a steak? See what I did there? Previous example? Okay. Anyway, that comma is still linking the ideas together. It's linking the dependent clause before the comma with the independent clause after the comma. Some students with busy schedules still find time to study. So I don't want to get too deep into the weeds of, the grammatical structures that are used in every example I show you. Primarily in this presentation, I'm just trying to show you that there are other ways to express things, and you can start by trying to combine ideas in a sentence. Connecting ideas makes your sentences more concise. That means they're more to the point, It means that you're not using more words than you need to. That's what concise means. I am not always a very concise person, as evidenced by many of my comments on this presentation, but concise means we're not using more than we need to. Here's an example. John is a fan of science fiction movies. His friend Mary likes them too. John and Mary are having a great time watching sci-fi. We can combine those. John and his friend Mary are science fiction movie fans. Look at that. Trimmed it down, got right to the point. Beautiful. Another issue that you're going to run into is the matter of fragments and run-ons. A fragment is a group of words that looks like a sentence but is missing a subject, a verb, or a complete thought. Therefore, it is an incomplete sentence, right? A fragment, just like there's puzzles missing from this completely white, there's puzzle pieces missing from this completely white puzzle. Good luck finishing that one. All right. Let's see. These are examples of fragments. They tend to follow certain patterns. This is kind of a helpful way to train your eye to identify these fragments. One example is when you have a word group that starts with a preposition. So look at this. It's hard to find time to study, period, with all of my other work, period. So in that second underlined sentence, where's the verb? We have no verb. We have no action. We have nobody doing the action. It's a fragment. But you can also see that the word what at the start of the sentence. Oh, no, I'm sorry. With, the word with. My mistake. Can't edit the recording now. With all of my other work, with is a preposition. It's important to do your work on time. So on is our preposition there in the fragment. Now, I will say that this second sentence would sound totally natural in a spoken conversation. What, imagine, a parent saying to their teenage child, it's important to do your work on time. I like to emphasize it. So there's ways that we can speak that, again, don't work quite as well or clearly in writing. But if you were writing a short story or a novel or a fictional scene of some kind or dialogue, right, you might have one person say this to another person as a piece of reported speech. But when it comes to writing a paper for composition, as many of you are or will be, you don't want these kinds of fragments. You want verbs. Here's another issue that we see. Fragments and run-ons. Sometimes you'll have a word group that starts with a dependent word, which also known as a subordinating conjunction or a subordinate conjunction. Subordinating conjunction. We got home early, period. Because we left early. This word because is a subordinating conjunction. All that means is that when you have one of these words at the start of a clause, the clause is now incomplete. And again, it kind of goes to that example I said earlier with although. Now I have another one with because. Because we left early, like what if I just stopped there? Because we left early, or because we left early. You don't know what happened. You don't know what I'm talking about. It's dependent. I need more information. So I could combine these sentences. I could just do a comma right here instead of a period. Say we got home early, comma, because we left early. Actually, I wouldn't even put a comma there. You could just have that be a simple sentence. We got home early because we left early. Second one, you'll never make it on time, period, with all the traffic, period. Again, that's one that sounds okay in conversation, but is not going to work on paper because there's no subject-verb relationship. I've heard many students in tutoring sessions say, oh, I thought that sentence sounded okay, or it sounds like it makes sense. And, you could be right about that, but the grammar might be off from a writing perspective. All right. So I've got an X next to the example that is not correct, incorrect, and a star next to the one that we like. So the issue here is sometimes we'll have a word group that starts with an ing verb form. That can be known as a gerund or a participial. depending on the sentence. Doesn't really matter. Just remember it's an ing word right now. I was running as fast as I could, hoping to get there on time. I could put a comma here, lowercase h, and it would be one sentence. But as it is, if I have a period right here and I have hoping to get there on time, I have a fragment. Doesn't work. So the star example right here combines those two. Sometimes we're going to see a fragment that has a word group with to and a verb that is also known as an infinitive. Here's an example. Cherie got underneath the car, period, to change the oil. So there's our to and our verb, to change. That's a fragment by itself. I got to lump that into a sentence somewhere. It needs a home. Cherie got underneath the car to change the oil. Well, I just took this period out, made this a lowercase t, stuck it on there, I'm good to go. Same here. To change the oil, Cherie got underneath the car. I hope that Cherie was following proper safety precautions in getting under a car, making sure the jack stands were secure and all of that. We'll hope the best for Cherie. Okay. Another example of a fragment type is a word group that starts with an example or explanation of something mentioned in the previous sentence. Here's what I mean. I am taking several classes this semester, period, such as English, comma, history, comma, and math. That list needs a home because there's no verb. There's no subject-verb relationship. Nobody's doing anything in the sentence. Nothing is happening. I just have the idea of English, history, and math. So I can stick that into the previous sentence, and now that fragment has a home. I am taking several classes this semester, comma, such as English, history, and math. All right. I enjoy watching scary movies, period. For example, Dawn of the Dead and the Friday the 13th movies. That, for example, it's another list of examples. I can stick that with another sentence to have it be complete. Otherwise, it's a homeless, floating around fragment. I don't know if you just heard my cat meowing at me. She wants to come talk about some grammar. I know, you're a grammar expert. Get out of here. All right, well, that's going on the recording too. Hold on one second. All right. She's a Siamese cat, by the way. I don't have the camera turned on. In case you're wondering, let's get back to the topic at hand. A run-on is created when two complete sentences, which are independent clauses, are joined together incorrectly, and that means without proper punctuation, and so they are written as one sentence. There are two kinds of run-on sentences. There are fused sentences and comma splices, which both sound maybe a little bit cooler than they actually are. What is a fused sentence? That's when we have two complete sentences and they are joined with no punctuation. Here's an example. Exercising is important. It can keep your weight down. Can you see where the division is? Or where it should be? What about in this one? I picked up my laundry and then I went home. So in the first example, I could put a period right here. Exercising is important, period. It can keep your weight down. That's not the only reason to exercise, by the way. Many other good reasons to exercise. Let's see. I picked up my laundry, comma, then I went home. That could work, but really, sorry, I'm incorrect there. You should put a period there. Put a period there. Either one could work, depending on the context. But the point is, dividing it up with nothing at all, that's a fused sentence. She had a sore throat. She was running a fever. I need some punctuation there. She had a sore throat, period. She was running a fever. We also have comma splices. Sound very serious, don't they? Some kind of genetic operation, perhaps. He's having a comma splice. Okay, when two complete sentences are only separated by a comma. This is an interesting rule, for reasons I'll explain in a moment. All right, she started feeling bad on Monday, comma. By Wednesday, she was running a high fever. So I underlined and colored this word so you can see where the separation between the sentences is. This is a complete sentence on its own. I could put a period right here and be done with it. She started feeling bad on Monday, period. And then this, by Wednesday, she was running a high fever. That could be its own sentence as well. I have a new subject, right? She was running. She, and then was running is our verb. Speaking a little bit faster than I'm thinking. That's not good. Think before you speak, folks. All right. I picked up my laundry. I went home. That's a case where in your comp class, or if you're writing an essay for school, something like that, you would want to put a period. Those are two separate sentences, two separate subjects, two separate verbs. I would say from a creative writing perspective, if you're reading a novel or a short story, depending on where the author of that story is from, you might see short sentences that are only connected by a comma. But for your cases, I would say find a different way to connect them with than just a comma. I'll show you another way soon. His job paid well, however, he still couldn't make ends meet. Sorry. This one here. Oh, I can write now. Can I write? Yes. Okay. So here is the division, right? His job paid well. I could just put a period and then make this a new sentence. However, he still couldn't make ends meet. Another option I would have there would be to take out however, and I could say but he still couldn't make ends meet. I'm going to get into that in a moment, but that's an example of a coordinating conjunction. All right, fixing run-on sentences. So here we go. Here's the details, more on how to fix them. One thing is just add a period. I picked up my laundry, period. Then I went home. She started feeling bad on Monday, period. By Wednesday, she was running a high fever. His job paid well, period. However, he still couldn't make ends meet. So like I said, that's one option, period. New word, however. Another way is to place I'll underline this, a comma in a coordinating conjunction between two independent clauses. If you already have a comma, then add the coordinating conjunction. And what do I mean by that? I'll look right here. I picked up my laundry and I went home. So here I can isolate the comma and the conjunction. Don't let the spacing mess with you, right? The comma is closer to this word laundry, but it is, in my mind, I think of this as like one block, comma, and I went home. Because I can change color too. Let's change color. Here, I, subject, picked up, verb, and then I have I, subject, and I, verb. So we can think of this as one clause, and this is another clause. She had a sore throat, comma, and she was running a fever. Again, same idea, right? This is a clause, this is a clause, and I'm using this building block as a connector. That was kind of a mixed metaphor. All right. The coordinating conjunctions can be remembered with this acronym, for and nor, but or yet so, also known as fanboys. Your fanboys will always be ready to help you repair fragments. So let's look at the structure. Oops, hold on one second. Structurally, I kind of break it down into blocks sometimes. Let me choose a different color here. It's a little bit easier to see. All right. So structurally, right, I can have these two blocks. I'm going to put an I in there, and I is for independent clause. That means it's a clause that can stand on its own. I have another one here, and then I have a period. So what I can do then is do comma plus, can I write it small enough? Fan, you get the idea. Fanboy, not fav boy, fan. All right. Maybe I should have practiced this before I started recording. That's okay. It makes it seem more lively, doesn't it? More spontaneous. All right, so there's our structure there. Yeah, let's look at some examples. So here I've got the same kind of structure set up. I've got independent clause 1 here. I've got my comma plus fanboys. That says fanboys, I promise. And then here I have my other independent clause. And then I have a period, of course, because that's the end of the sentence. All right, fine, I'll neaten this up. I know some people might watch and they're like, I can't believe you just left it like that. Oh my God. Fan boys. Unfortunately, you can't write it. Oops. Where did it go? There. Unfortunately, you can't write it as boys with an I like a lot of people do these days. Use a Y. All right, here we go. Bring me my dinner, comma, for I am hungry. Okay, most of us don't write or talk this way anymore. Bring me my dinner, for I am hungry. We don't talk that way. The tone of that is a little bit old-fashioned, but the word for sometimes can be used kind of in the same way we use because. Why should you bring my dinner? Because I'm hungry. If you know Spanish, the for here is similar to the way Spanish speakers sometimes use por, right? Similar idea. Okay. It was getting late, comma, and there was no sign of the cat. So that's one independent clause connected to another by comma and. I did not do my homework, nor did I study for the test. So go on and give me that low grade. I don't know. I didn't do it. I didn't study. Whatever. We were late for class, comma, but the teacher didn't mind. Independent clause, comma, but another independent clause. Same structure. All right. Michael would have to eat breakfast now, or he would have to wait until noon to eat. You can just see these ideas on either side of the construction are complete sentences that they could be on their own as a sentence, but we're using this right here to connect them. We're showing something about the relationship between these two clauses. Susie ran a marathon today, yet she doesn't seem tired at all. Go, Susie. All right. I forgot my ID, so they wouldn't let me get on the plane. Yeah, that's true. They won't let you on the plane without your ID. Okay. Now this last page is full of rules. Let's start up here. Okay. Add a semicolon. What's a semicolon? That's this one. I'll draw one up here. Semicolon looks like that. You've probably seen that all over the place. So there's your semicolon, okay? Between the two independent clauses. So this is another way to combine fragments. I picked up my laundry, then I went home. His job paid well, however, he still couldn't make ends meet. So here's the semicolon, here's the other semicolon. Remember, when using a semicolon, you must follow these guidelines. Okay, we've got 4 important rules about these. I will say this. The writer Kurt Vonnegut, who's a favorite writer of many, said somewhere, I forget where, he said, people only use semicolons to prove that they went to college, something like that. Like, it's the only time you're going to see people use a semicolon is to, show it off. I'll say they're pretty useful. Just depends. It's a tool like anything else. All right. First rule right here, a semicolon can only be used where a period could be used. So that's the biggest test right there. If you can't just put a period, you can't do a semicolon either. No, you can't. So that's the first test. Number 2, there must be a complete sentence on either side of the semicolon. So that's just kind of a rephrasing of the first point here, right? You wouldn't use a period if you didn't have 2 complete sentences. So the stuff on either side of it is not gonna, it's not gonna be complete. Or excuse me. Visually, let's see. If I have one sentence here and I have another here, That's the same as if I have a sentence and a period and a sentence and another period. Same idea. Okay, the other thing is the two sentences must be closely related in order to be punctuated with the semicolon. Right? If I say, I was late for work, semicolon, the boss was mad, that makes a lot more sense than like, I was late for work, vanilla is my favorite ice cream. It's like, what do those sentences have to do with each other? It doesn't matter that they could stand on their own. They're not related. Most semicolons are followed by a transitional word, which indicates the relationship of the two sentences. I don't eat much ice cream, semicolon. However, when I do, I enjoy strawberry. I don't know. I was making that one up. I'm making this whole thing up. Can you tell? But I hope you still find it useful. All right, this isn't erasing. We're going to keep going. Parting words for you. These simple fixes can improve your writing and make it readable and interesting. So I hope you have found this presentation helpful. Again, it's just a matter of applying these tools that I've given you in the video and understanding how that can help you improve your writing. So thank you for watching. Sorry for some of the hiccups there, but I hope this helps with your understanding of the writing process. Thanks.